Did you know that 75% of people have presentation anxiety, making public speaking the number one fear? Hi, my name is John Ryan, and after doing over 2,000 presentations in the last 15 years, I want to share with you my top 5 tips for helping you get rid of fear and anxiety around public speaking. And stick around to the last one because that's what I refer to as the anxiety annihilator. Let's get started. Number 5 is practice. And I know that's not very exciting, but it is absolutely crucial because if you want true confidence as a speaker, that doesn't come from pumping yourself up. That comes from competence, which comes from practice. So if you want to get really good at hitting a baseball, as an example, then you got to grab the bat, get inside the batting cage, and take some swings. So practice like it's a real presentation. If you're planning on standing up, practice standing up. If you're planning on sitting down, practice sitting down. Say it out loud. And another important tip is to time yourself to see how fast you really talk. This is really one thing that I wish I knew early on in my career. In fact, for my first 4-day presentation that I ever did, unfortunately, I started the training and I was really excited, and I condensed about 6 hours of content into about 90 minutes because apparently at that point in my career, my mouth moved much faster than my brain, and that's not a good thing. To avoid that, you want to practice like it's the real deal. Say it out loud, and equally importantly, test for timing. Number 4 is memorize your first 10 minutes. As you may know, people form their first impression of you within the first 7 to 30 seconds. So if we're beginning a presentation and we don't know what to say, or we're fumbling with technology, that's not going to create a great impression, and we're going to get nervous, which is going to make it that much more difficult. So what you want to do is make your introduction, the first 10 minutes, unconscious. You don't have to think about it. Practice it so that you can just deliver the message automatically, confidently, and competently. I remember when I first started traveling and training nationally, I spent the first 6 months of my career memorizing my first 40 minutes of the training. It was a 2-day workshop, and there were a lot of things to set up to create a successful training. So what I would do is every night before I go to sleep is I would go through as best I could verbatim what I was going to say the next morning over and over and over again until it became completely unconscious. And the good news is that unless you're doing a multi-day presentation, you only have to memorize the first 10 minutes to have that confidence inside. Now, if your presentation's 10 minutes or less, that means you're going to have memorized the whole thing, which is awesome. However, if it's a longer presentation, you'll at least have a really solid start to your presentation, which allows us to do number 3, which is to not focus on us and our presentation, but to speak to one person. And there are a couple things that I mean by that. First, don't worry about what you're going to say. In fact, don't worry about you at all. It's not about you. When we're feeling anxiety, we're worried about us rather than focusing on the audience. We're thinking, what am I going to say? What if I mess up? What if things don't work out the way I planned? We're worried about us instead of focusing on the audience that we're there to serve. Our audience isn't there for us. They're there for their own reasons. In fact, one tip you can do is don't even think about them as an audience. Don't think about them as a group. They're not homogenous. They're not one group. They're a set of individuals. So what we can do is speak to one person at a time. Speak to the person in the front who got here early, camped out so they could be the first one in the room and pick their seat. Or speak to the person in the back who came late, is having a tough day, and they want to hear your message. Or the person off to the side. Now, that's a little bit harder to do when you're doing it virtually, but if you're doing it that way or through a video like this, speak to the person on the other side of the screen and speak to one person at a time rather than speaking to the group. And remember, they're not here listening to you just to see if you can deliver a message perfectly. They're here because they have questions they want answered and they have problems that they want to be solved. So it's not about us. Focus on the person that is there that came because they need your help. And if you're focusing 100% on showing up and being of service for the people in front of you, there's no room for anxiety and there's no room for fear. And number 2 is have compassion, not only for the people that you're speaking to, but also for yourself. You can only do what you can do. And don't compare yourself to me or any other speaker out there. Everyone starts somewhere. And as long as you're doing your absolute best, that's all that matters. When I first started out in training and development 28 years ago, I wanted to be like all the professional speakers out there that I saw and the coaches I wanted to be, and I tried to emulate other people. But where I really found the permission to be myself was when I learned this concept from Brian Tracy, and he was talking about Dale Carnegie, who said that whenever you deliver a presentation, there are 3 presentations. There's the one that you want to give, the one that you actually give, and the one that you wish you gave. And there's a purpose for each one of these. All 3 of them are important. The one that you want to give, obviously, is the target. That's what we want to achieve. That's the standard we're trying to get to. Number 2 is the feedback. It lets us know, hey, how good are we at delivering this presentation? And then the third one, the post-game analysis, if you will, is taking the learning, doing the analysis, figuring out, hey, what went well, what didn't go well. And if you can take that learning from the third one, the one you wish you gave, and apply it to the one you want to give on the next one, you're gonna have a path to perpetual improvement on your presentations. That's our first 4 tips, and those will dramatically reduce, if not eliminate, your presentation anxiety. And there's one more tool you've got to have in your arsenal, which is number 1, the Anxiety Annihilator. This comes from a set of coaching tools called timeline techniques, specifically the anxiety model. And if you haven't heard of timeline techniques before, that's not a problem. We're going to do a modified version for the anxiety model that has no timeline required. First, we need to talk about how we create anxiety. Yes, presentation anxiety isn't something that happens to us. It's something that we create. Anxiety, like all emotions, is time-based. Specifically, anxiety is a future-based emotion, and you can only experience that feeling on things that haven't happened yet. You may recall having anxiety in the past, like if you think about your 3rd grade spelling bee, you might remember having anxiety then, but chances are you don't wake up in cold sweats in the middle of the night because you don't feel anxiety about it in the present. Why not? Because that happened a long time ago in the past. We may have felt that anxiety in the moment, but once it's done, it completely disappears. So how are we creating it based on these future events? Well, what happens is when we're experiencing anxiety in the present, we're looking at the future and we're seeing it one of 2 ways. First, we're seeing it either not work out at all, or maybe we see it work out and maybe we see it might not work out. And then our brain goes back and forth between the 2 images, trying to figure out how do we mitigate the chances of it not working out so we can actually have the result that we want. And that itself also creates some anxiety energy. So how do we annihilate it? Well, we got to change what we see and how we see it. What you're going to do, and we're going to practice this in just a moment, is you're going to imagine that you're in the future 15 minutes after your next presentation. And as you look back on the experience, you're seeing it happen not only as good as you wanted, but even better than you had planned. And this makes it impossible for you to feel anxiety because of 2 things. Number 1, you're seeing it work out not only as well as, but perhaps even better than you planned. So what is there to feel anxious about? And it already happened. It's already done in your mind. So that eliminates the possibility because it's a future-based emotion, and now we're looking at it as if it's already done. If you like, do this with me right now. Now, this is a closed eye exercise, so if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, then clearly this is not the time for you to do that. Save it for later. But for the rest of you, go ahead and close your eyes and just imagine yourself out into the future 15 minutes after the successful completion of your next presentation and see it working out exactly the way you wanted it to. See it working out even better than you wanted to. The only time this ever doesn't work in reducing anxiety is when you see things not working out. So make sure that if there's anything that's not right, to fix that in your mind. You're the director here. You're in charge. You can make it do whatever you want. This is in your mind. See it exactly as you want it. It's already done, or perhaps even better than that. And once you get it, then check on the anxiety. Is it there? Or is it gone now? That's right. Awesome. If not, you can pause it and work on it until it completely releases, because the only time it wouldn't work is if you're seeing it not work out, and that's on us. We got to be the director here. And once you get it, just go ahead and come back to now. Come back into the room and open your eyes. And good job. So that's the anxiety model, or what I like to think of as the anxiety annihilator. All you have to do is shift your perspective. Go out into the future 15 minutes after it's done. We're looking back and we see it happen exactly as we want, if not a little better, and the anxiety completely disappears. So those are my top 5 tips for eliminating presentation anxiety. Number 5 is to practice. Competence breeds confidence. Get in the batting cage and take some swings and develop that skill. Number 4 is to memorize your first 10 so you have that down pat and you can start with a solid beginning. And that allows you to do number 3, which is speak to one person. It's not about us. Focus on the person who is there in front of you. All of them are there because they want to get a question answered or solve a problem. And number 2, have compassion. Remember the 3 presentations that we give, and whenever you need it, make sure you use the anxiety annihilator. And now that you know how to eliminate presentation anxiety, it's time to level up your language skills and positively impact and influence your audience. So check out the video on screen, The Secret Power of Framing. Until next time, develop yourself, empower others, and lead by example.